Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. Just got two more coming in from the waiting room. No doubt there will be a couple of latecomers, but that's fine. We'll just let them in as and when. Anyone who's emailed me, thanks very much for sending that information. It's very helpful to know where you all are with this kind of thing. I just thought it would be a good idea for us to get together. I promised you more information, and the easiest way to do that is just get everyone together like we're doing today. I'm going to run through a bit of a presentation with you, then I'm going to get your opinion. Because when I do eventually develop a course for this, I want it to be right, and I want it to contain the right things. Sound like a plan?
Okay.
Are you okay with it being recorded? Because there's about 3 people couldn't make it, and I'd like to send the recording out, and I'll send you a copy as well.
That's
Is that
fine.
okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
If anyone would prefer not to appear on the recording, just turn your camera off. But it's only going to be sent out to the people who've expressed an interest in this anyway. So I'm Gary, as you can see from Zoom. That's always handy when it captions you so people know who you are. And you know a bit about me. You know I've been training photography for quite some time now, running workshops and then online courses and other formats too. And what I really want to do, I've always thought that there is great potential out there for a course to train people in how to do what I do. And the story of that is I finally allowed myself to do it reluctantly in early 2020. I think it was something like February 2020. And I don't mind admitting, I got a bit paranoid about it. I thought if I send this out to people in the UK, then it's going to go out to local people and I'll end up with people competing with me. My mindset has changed completely since then. I now realize there is really no such thing as competition. And honestly, I've been doing the workshop thing for years. I've gone on online courses, but I'm still doing workshops and I still enjoy it. But it's time for me to move on to something new, and this is probably going to be it. I did in 2020 promote it within the USA, and a few people were interested, but the USA is a bit difficult with Facebook advertising. It costs a lot more money and people don't seem as responsive. And I think it's with it being out the country as well. But then, of course, 2020, other things happened, didn't they? So it kind of got put on the back burner. But it occurred to me a few months ago, it was time to get it back up there and see what people think of it. So I would very much value your opinions on what we're discussing today. I'm just going to hop over to PowerPoint for a moment. Can you all mute yourselves, please, just in case there's any unnecessary background noise? Very often what happens, it's not you. Sometimes, especially with a laptop, the speaker's voice comes back through people's microphone and you get feedback. There's always this annoying thing with Zoom that you can't see, and that's that the controls get right in the way of the bit you need to set. So feel free to ask any questions as we go, but this is going to be pretty short. I think this little bit's going to be maybe 10, 15 minutes, maybe not even that. I just want to go through a few basics with you and let you know where I'm at and give you a few pointers. Because the way I want to do this is I am grateful for your time and I want to give you something in return. If you decide you don't need or want a training course on how to set workshops up, but you still want to have a go at it, I'm going to give you some useful information today. And I'm not holding anything back. I think I mentioned at some point that we also run stargazing tours, and we have a very popular operation over at High Force Waterfall in Durham on the River Tees. We get about 3,500 to 4,000 visitors a year there. And I also decided late last year I was going to start training people how to do that too. And we ran the course and it went very well. So I'm keen to do something for photographers now. It just seems to make sense to me. I should be sharing my expertise and people can benefit from it. So if you are already in the photography business or you have attempted to be in the photography business, you'll know that everything generally out there in the world and in the business marketplace is changing. And we have to adapt. So, of course, a lot of us adapted what we were doing in the pandemic. Some of us just had to sit it out and get on with things. And that was really a catalyst for me to start doing online learning. And it worked great. We had a lot of people, a lot of great speakers, a lot of great tutors in 2020 and 2021. I've mentioned a few of them. I reached out to Joe Cornish, who only lives about an hour away from me, and Joe ran some courses for us. And there's a guy called Mike Shaw in America, who is a very well-known author and astrophotography tutor, who does a lot of his stuff in the canyons and the national parks. And I've got Mike involved and a few other people too. I don't know if you've heard of Tesney Ward. She's a wildlife photographer. Tez has done some tuition for us as well, but lots of other speakers too, and it was fun. And that was one model that really worked for us. I realized that camera clubs were closing down in March 2020, and nobody had a camera club to go to. So I started a virtual camera club, and it was really popular. It ended up being a really nice model though, because it gave me the chance to meet lots of speakers and to collaborate with lots of people. So we had lots of people in for a one-off talk, but then when I realized some of them were going down really well with the students, we were doing longer courses like 6-week tuition. So 5 main categories I've narrowed this down to, and you're going to find that there's probably 1, maybe 2 that really appeal to you, but don't discount ones you haven't previously considered. So rather than corporate photography, I don't know if you've noticed, those of you in the photography business, there is the bottom end of the market, people are leaning towards photographing their own events and photographing their own weddings, or getting a relative with a camera or a colleague with a camera to do it. Of course, if you are in the mid-range to high-end market, there's no competition there because they're not your people anyway. But there's another way of doing business with the corporate market. So lots of people are going to do their own photography, whether you want them to or not, whether they get training or not. So you may as well be part of it. And it's not just about costs, especially for events. People want somebody there with a camera. And there is something to be said for somebody who is part of the organization going around and taking the photographs. First of all, they know what to photograph. They know the important bits. They know how to label the shots so they can categorize them. But also, some of the people there will know them, so they probably will relax around them. But it's really convenient. If you have an event that needs covering, you don't have to book a professional photographer and hope they're available for that day. You just go and get the person who's inside the company with the camera to do it for you. As you're probably aware as a photographer, and this applies to all photography training, sometimes it's really small tweaks that make the difference between a good image and a bad image. Like, for instance, not having somebody staring into the sun when they've been photographed and squinting and being overexposed, things like that. Also, a lot of people don't realize that when they use an auto exposure on a camera or a video camera, and they've got somebody sat in front of a window, the auto exposure is either going to pick the window light or the person. If they pick the person, they'll be correctly exposed and the window will be blown. If they pick the outside to get the exposure from, to meter from, then the person's going to be in the dark. But it's little things like that that amateurs don't know about. So there is room for training. The average person, whether they're using a phone or maybe even an entry-level DSLR or something like that on semi-auto mode, can learn in a day the things they need to do. And a professional photographer can help. Consider smartphones. Smartphones are getting better and better. I don't know what you've got. I tried a few different ones about a year ago. I've got a Samsung S22 Ultra. I've got a Google Pixel 6 Pro and got an iPhone 13 Pro Max. And at the time, I came to the conclusion I still liked the iPhone, but the Galaxy S22 Ultra was clearly the better camera. And the Google Pixel is good at particular things as well, but just hasn't got the quality of camera of the other two. But when the iPhone 14 came out, I upgraded to that immediately because it's the highest quality one in the market. I've not had to play with the S23 Ultra yet. It's still excellent, but they haven't made as many major improvements as they have done with the iPhones, for instance. But it's about time because the iPhones weren't performing very well in low light. But they're out there. So you may as well run courses for them. And it's not that hard to get to learn how to use a smartphone. You know, most people will just use an automatic mode. When they want to go into the camera, they'll hunt through the menu, find the camera icon. They don't even know there are shortcuts and just press the button. But again, with a few tweaks, I do a workshop which has a presentation and a practical element where in half a day, I can get people to the point where they're really good using a smartphone for photography. This is something you're going to want to look up, and I'll happily send you the link, but you can Google it. Has anyone heard of this? Hilton doing training for what they call waitographers. This was something they were doing last summer, the back end of last summer, and it was in the Emirates. So they haven't even rolled it out worldwide yet, but I think it's a brilliant idea. They were training their waiters in the hotels to take photographs with smartphones. So they were photographing families and couples when they were having their holiday, having their meal, having a night out. And it's a great idea. I love the name as well, Waitographer. Of course, they'll have that trademarked, probably. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't want to compete with Hilton. But there are plenty of other opportunities there. It just takes a little bit of lateral thinking, and that was one example. But all in all, remember, there are a growing number of businesses wanting to take a DIY approach to event and corporate photography, even product photography. Don't think of it as competition. Once you become a trainer, you can benefit from that, enable them, support them, train them, of course, at an appropriate rate. On to the next one. Photo walks. This is a nice, easy entry to the world of running workshops. If you call it a photo walk, then it's quite different. There's no pressure on you. You're not saying that I'm the expert and I'm going to teach you how to use your camera. It's just going to be a photo walk around a particular area, more of a social thing. It'll be a lower price. But on the way, people will have questions and you can show your knowledge. So even though you made no claims to be able to show them how to shoot in full manual, I imagine the majority of you could show someone how to shoot in full manual. And if you don't, I can easily train you. People are not going to be expecting to take a photo walk and come back being able to use aperture priority, shutter priority, and certainly not full manual. But it's a nice little extra and it shows your expertise. This is a great place to start if you want to teach and build your confidence, also to build a list of clients. I don't know how many people you'd be comfortable with on a photo walk, but I think it's pretty reasonable to have 15 or 20. When you're just starting out, you might want to think in terms of 10. It might take a while to get more than 10, but it's okay to have a big group because people tend to get into smaller groups and they help each other. And that's a good secret for workshops as well. Two things. I'm giving away two major secrets here. When you organize your first events, try and make sure they're somewhere with a good 4G or 5G signal. Why? Because if somebody asks for help on a camera you're unfamiliar with, chances are you'd be able to work it out. But it's also really easy to Google it and look for the advice on there. And if you're not positioning yourself as any kind of expert on that camera, it's absolutely okay to do that. The other one is to make use of experience in the group. So if you have a group of, say, 15 or 20, then it's a great idea to break that down into smaller groups and make sure each smaller group has somebody who's more experienced than them. And they will sort themselves out. You'll then just leisurely walk between them and make sure everything's okay. But photo walks, great place to start. And remember this, if this has never occurred to you before, simply by being the organizer, by being the person who's organized the event, even though you are not claiming to be an expert photographer, you are positioning yourself as the group expert, as the one they all look to, the group leader. So before too long, people will look to you for leadership and they'll recommend people to you and you'll have a certain status. And that'll make it much easier to transition onto workshops from there. If you're planning to offer workshops at some point, bear that in mind. So you must make sure that people understand this is a photo walk, not a workshop. And I don't know how you're going to do that. It might just be the name. It might be the pricing. It might be the locations. You know, for a photo walk, you might go somewhere that a lot of people know, maybe in a city, have a walk around a city and just find out what you can see. Point them in different directions, let them discover things and pass them among each other. But for a workshop, there should be a little bit more planning to it than that. It'll be a higher price. It will probably be a smaller group and other things. Just think about how you differentiate it. Because if you make it more or less the same thing, all that happens is you're eventually asking people just to pay more, which is not that huge an issue. You know, if people want it, if they enjoy it, most people will tolerate a price rise, but it helps to plan ahead. You could target local people or you could target visitors. There are two ways of doing this. So local people, the easiest way to do it is probably on something like Facebook. You can look it up yourself. I used to run a few different groups. I started one off called I Love Durham, which was for photography of Durham City Centre and County Durham. I don't even know how many members that has now. I think it'll probably be about 50,000. And it just grew organically. You know, I put a bit of effort in at first, sharing pictures from it. But once a few people get into it, What happens then if you leave it as an open group, as a public group, when people post things, it goes onto their news feed and other people see it and they join the group and so on. The only thing I would say about that is position it right from the start as being a photography group, and then it's clear. Because you're going to eventually want to use that group to start filling your workshops up. So this is one of the things I did. I positioned myself as a go-to local expert by having groups that were locally based. And that's the way to do it. If you do one, for instance, on landscape photography, and anybody from anywhere can join it, when you come to recruit people for your workshops, they could be anywhere in the country and possibly even in other countries. If you want to run local workshops and you want them to be from a local audience, have a locally themed Facebook group. And there's a company that's doing a good job of that. If you want visitors, the only problem with visitors is you may not get repeat business until the next time they're in the area, but they could recommend people. If you want to be working with visitors, if you live near an area that is visited a lot by tourists, especially in the peak season, you're going to want to orient your promotion towards them and get in touch with people like Tourism Information and make sure they have your leaflets. But there are websites you can use for that as well. You should get insured right from the start. It won't cost you a fortune. Beginners insurance for workshops and events, maybe £200, something like that, maybe 300. My policy is currently about 600-700, but that's because we include night photography, stargaze, and employees. So it eventually racks up, but it's still not a fortune for what we're doing. Also consider using a waiver. So this is like a release form. So even though a release form, I don't like going here, but I need to make you aware of it. And also I'm no legal expert, but you need to follow this up, that a release form will not release you from criminal negligence. So if you do something that's considered criminal negligence, like you haven't really paid due care and attention to a group and they're in a dangerous situation and you know it, then a release form won't count for anything for that. But if you're doing things right, and if you've considered health and safety, having a release form will help you. It's also a good way to set the scene for people because they are signing a form saying, I take responsibility for myself. So not only is that telling them that you care about their well-being, but also they are taking responsibility for their own well-being. Never been sued. I don't know anybody else who has. It's a really low-risk business to be in, and I think that's why the premiums are so low. So always take heart in that. You know, if you get an insurance quote, it's nice for it to be cheap anyway, but if it's cheap, that means you're a good bet as far as the insurers are concerned. You know, they're never expecting to get a claim from you. Finally, if it is something you really are worried about, you know, if you're going in places that are more hazardous, you might want to consider setting up a limited company instead of a sole trader business. There's more paperwork, you have to pay your accountant more, but you have limited liability in that if anybody does take you to court, the amount of money they claim begins and ends at the assets in the business. They can't come after your personal assets. Sorry to bring that up, but I think it's important. It would be negligent of me not to tell you about that, but it's never been a problem. So here's the way to do it. Pick an interesting route. I used to use Durham City Centre a lot. There's a couple of people here from York. York's nice too. By the way, this is an example a lot of you could use. There was somebody, the tourism information people at York told me about, who was operating about 5 years ago. And what he used to do, it was a little bit like the way the Ghost Walk people operate. Anybody who's ever been to York or cities like that will know there are people that go around wearing like black coats and top hats and things and doing ghost tours at night. Those people do exceptionally well. I've seen groups of those with 30 or 40 people and they all pay on the night. But there was somebody who just put up a sign and photography tour here, and people would meet at 10 o'clock and he would advertise that in the Tourist Information Centre as well. And yes, I guess there were some days when maybe nobody turned up, but there were probably days when 20 or 30 people turned up, depending on the publicity as well. So that's another way to do it. Get to know the route well beforehand, walk it yourself. Yes, I have been in situations where I've offered a photo walk or a workshop in a city I'm not overly familiar with. I turn up there half a day early, I work the route out on a map, and I walk it first, so I know it. One-to-one tuition is another great way to get into this. So think about this, how many people learn a musical instrument by paying a tutor by the hour or half hour? Loads of people. That's how the vast majority of people who have any kind of tuition learn an instrument. It's the way it's done. It's the way people learn to sing as well. Is it possible it might work for photography? Absolutely, yes. I don't know if you've ever noticed the way that people often advertise music tuition is put a poster up, maybe in libraries, maybe community centres or universities, and they use that American format very often, you know, where you Microsoft Publisher used to have a template for this. I'm sure you can still get them, where most of it's poster, then there are strips at the bottom you can tear off with the name and number of the person on. Dead easy to do it. And of course, if you do something like that, where they can tear off a strip with your details on it, saves somebody thinking, that's interesting, and pulling the whole poster down. And then your campaign's over at that location until you realize it. Absolutely, yes, it does work for photography. At camera shops, you know, that's a great potential collaboration. Work with a camera shop, put your flyers out, put them in on a percentage, or you recommend people there for equipment and come up with some kind of mutual deal. Great way to build your reputation and your confidence. If you're only with one person, you're only working with one kind of camera. And most of the time when you're doing one-to-ones, the person's taking photographs, and it is really quite a chilled out way to work as a tutor. Research in your area what people pay for instrument tuition. You can charge at least that. You can probably charge a lot more. It depends what you're comfortable with and how affluent the clients are that you're going after in your area. If you're wondering, are there affluent clients who can pay more in amateur photography? Yes, absolutely there are. You know, if you think about it, there are people out there who might not be particularly skilled photographers, but they may have £5,000 worth of gear, £10,000 or more sitting in the cupboard. So if they've paid that much for gear, they'll certainly pay to learn how to use it. And that's a really good way to phrase your advertising. You know, if somebody doesn't know how to use something and they're shooting in full auto, all it takes is a couple of hours with you and you get them into manual. That was always my claim. By the end of this workshop, and I used to run a workshop called Control Your Camera that was solely about that, I will get you into full manual. And we did, because it's easy. It's a lot easier than people think when you work out a way for teaching it. And I have a lot of methods for teaching that kind of thing. You'll get to know lots of cameras as well in a very leisurely environment, one at a time. Honestly, what do you need to know? If you're Canon, you need to have a play with a Nikon. If you're Nikon, you need to have a play with a Canon. And you've just covered a good 50% or more of cameras that people will turn up to workshops with, probably more like 75. You might want to have a look at Olympus. You might want to have a look at Fuji. And then you're something like 90 to 95%. How did I start? I was used to Canon. So I bought a cheap Nikon and I bought a cheap bridge camera, a Fuji bridge camera, and I had to play with them. I didn't need to. Because once you know one camera, it's just a matter of finding out whether things are on the menu. You'll find what you need to know. And you'll just get better as time goes on. You'll find that most Canons are the same, most Fujis are the same, most Nikons are the same, and so on, or similar enough. It's a nice way to spend the day. I used to do this in the Easter and summer holidays where I'd say, right, those 2 days I'm going to do one-to-ones. There's limited places available. I'll take 3, 4, maybe 5 students. And we'd do it for an hour and a half each. And I'd put maybe half an hour in between, maybe an hour if it was lunchtime, and just go out the way and have a little break as well. And if you get the weather, it's a lovely way to spend a day. You need to factor in your travel expenses and time. So remember, you are traveling to a location, you're traveling from it, you've got break times in between. Make sure you're earning enough to make it worth your while. Or just say, actually, it's just pocket money while I learn how to get involved in the business. And if you are looking for just pocket money and a nice lifestyle business, this one may be perfect, but it'll also get you started in workshops. Which brings us to this. If you enjoy running photo walks or giving one-to-one tuition, this may be the next logical step, but don't necessarily put yourself in a position where you feel you have to do one than the other. If you're feeling brave and you know cameras pretty well and are confident with different brands, go straight into it. We'll just ask you all to check and mute yourselves, please. Just make sure there's no background noise, thank you. But it's absolutely up to you. And when I do put a course together, I'm going to give full tuition on how to do this, because I went straight into photography workshops, pretty much. I volunteered on a photo walk, then the next thing I did was a workshop. And that was all I did from that point on. Did occasional one-to-ones just to bring money in the holidays. realized eventually I didn't need to do that. But however you start will probably be how you operate for your first year. So put some thought into your business model. When I put a course together, a lot of that will be about business models and about planning. Key variables to think about is where you're going to do it, your location, the duration of it, the level, the group size, and the price. I've done all sorts. We have hired lots of historic buildings. We find that to be a great draw. So there's something pretty cool about hiring somewhere like Durham Cathedral for the night. There's not many people get to do that. And then just wander around with 30 people in the dark taking photographs. And all of these variables are interdependent. So if you're going to have a small group, you're probably going to have to charge a higher price. If it's a longer workshop, it's going to be a higher price. Shorter, you can get away with more. So when you adjust one of these, the others fall into place as well. When I started running workshops, I started off doing them fairly short, 4 hours. There are people out there who do a whole day, or they might do a whole week, especially if they're going somewhere with people and doing a residential. That is an option. But you know what? Doing local groups, you can be pretty profitable, especially if you're doing 2 in the same day or night, or 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the evening. I've managed to do 3 in a day and then 3 the next day. It's a bit tiring, but it's worth it. It's a good way of blocking off a weekend. And people will follow you as well from one to the other. But I did find that 4 was a bit long, 4 hours. 4 hours, you have to have a break for a start. You can't do 4 hours straight, no matter how energetic you're feeling. You need a toilet break at the very least. Then I knocked it down to 3. The reason I did 4 was because everybody else wasn't. It just seemed like a way to start it. 3's okay. 3's a bit long. My wife pointed this one out, that people were leaving early. And it wasn't because they didn't enjoy it. It's just 3 hours was more than enough. And so I started knocking them down to 2.5 hours, and even some of the ones we do at 2 hours now. If we do an astrophotography shoot at a single location, it's probably going to be 2 hours because we'll just stay where we are. And usually when there's nights when the stars are out, it gets cold and people don't want to be around much longer. Most shooters begin with something in a nearby city or a large town. You can do something during the day. If you can capture the retired market, then that means you can do stuff during the week, during the day. Otherwise, it'll be weekends. And once you have cracked a local market and put a couple of local workshops together, consider night photography. You'll be surprised how few people know how to do things like light trails, for instance, or how to photograph a street in the dark. And if you don't, that's something else I can help you with because it's easy. But it's the sort of thing where people get really unusual photographs that get lots of attention. So consider that too. You may have noticed, I know at least one of you has worked for them. There's a large company based in Australia that's been establishing Facebook groups. For instance, I'm near a place called Bishop Auckland. It doesn't have one, but if they did, it would be a Facebook group called Bishop Auckland Photography Group. It's that simple. They managed to get a lot of the domain names as well, but they are all over. And they began by offering free walks. They began by offering walks that were a small fee and then paying someone a small fee to run them. And then gradually they started announcing workshops and paying people to run those too. They started with Facebook. And that's how I started several years before they appeared, but it's certainly a way to go. You will know these, you'll have seen these. If you want to pick out a city in the UK and put that in then photography group, you'll find them. The logo is the same on all of them. So you'll soon work out who they are. Usually they stipulate you have to live locally to join the group, but I've joined loads of them and nobody's ever noticed or said anything about it, just for research. They tried to pivot during the pandemic and do online learning. I think it kind of worked, but they quickly went back to workshops. This will scale as far as you want to. And how do you scale this up? You scale it up by charging more. You scale it up by working out how to take bigger groups, even if you have to hire assistants. You scale it up by hiring other tutors, to the point where you might decide you don't want to be a tutor anymore, or maybe you do. It's up to you. You've got that option. You scale it up by going for the luxury market. You scale it up by doing multi-day trips. So many different ways to do it. Finally, we're not going to do too much of this today, but it's something that I've mentioned already, so I'm going to bring it into the discussion. Once people were stuck at home and they had no alternative, people adapted to Zoom pretty quickly. I mean, you're all on Zoom now, and most of you probably don't think anything of that. So people got used to learning online. And we've tried all sorts, and I did find a format where we could teach beginners how to use their camera in full manual using Zoom, and it worked. We just found that it had to be groups of maybe 6, 7, 8, no more than that. It wasn't economical to do it one at a time, but you can do that with Photoshop and Lightroom as well. So many people out there who want to learn how to edit. Photoshop and Lightroom are the two big packages, and it's really easy to teach them on Zoom. So you can teach photography in that you can tell people about how to shoot a particular subject, you can give examples of it, and then you give them assignments, then you check back. I find that people love getting feedback. The only feedback most people get on the photographs is occasionally from friends and relatives, occasionally on Facebook. Facebook likes, they're not an accurate way of assessing your photography. There are certain things you can do to get more Facebook likes. We've played around with this in the group. We found things like moving the saturation slider up, for instance. It sounds crazy, but gets you a load of likes. But I don't think you're that kind of photographer. But anyway, that was one thing we discovered. Also, people will like on social media a photograph for the subject material or for the effects being used in it rather than the actual quality of the photograph. But think about geographic areas. So the thing is, if you're going to run online courses, you could do anywhere in the world. But if you're recruiting people from anywhere in the world and building up a mailing list, when the time comes to run a workshop, you'd better have separated those people out. Otherwise, you're going to lose them off your list because they don't want to know about local workshops. So bear that in mind. I, for quite a while, had online courses solely with local people because then after the pandemic, we could go back to workshops and it would be the same people. The easiest way is Zoom, dead easy. You can do it for free, but if you do it for free on Zoom, you'll be kicked off after 40 minutes, then you'll have to dial back in. But you know what? If you want to do a short course and it's less than 40 minutes, you don't have to pay for Zoom. If you want to do a bit longer than 40 minutes, you can have 35 minutes, have a toilet break or a coffee break, and then get them to log back in. But it doesn't cost a fortune. You'll pay maybe about £10 a month. I've seen it for half that on offer before. So what we did first of all was use Zoom and also set up a private Facebook group. People love a private Facebook group, somewhere to share their work, because everybody's on Facebook already. Instagram, people are on that too, but Facebook is very good for groups. Having an online income stream could make your business more resilient. If there ever was another pandemic, this should be a first option if you're running workshops, because it can be done and people will respond to it. Hopefully there won't be, but you need to know anyway. So thanks for your attention. I'm just going to stop sharing that. And first of all, I'm going to take general questions. So if you have a question, just unmute and speak up. If you know how to put your hand up on Facebook, on Zoom, you can do it. That's under reactions, raise hand. But it's a small enough group. Do you have a question, Steve?
Yeah, it really goes right back down to the very beginnings, I suppose. It's like you know, not so much to do with the actual photography, but more about just breaking into converting what is essentially a hobby that I love doing and that I'm reasonably good at, and get involved with people to do. But then that's all done on a very informal, you know, amongst friends type of basis. Making that transition to turn it into a business, it's really, you know, quite a mystery to me in terms of what you'd be thinking about doing first and what sort of steps you need to go through. I mean, you used a couple of terms there which already foxed me: sole trader versus limited company. I mean, you know,
they're just business structures. Yeah. So a sole trader is the kind of thing you can start anytime. You don't have to set up any legal entity. You just start trading. You let HMRC know within a reasonable space of time, usually when you file your first accounts. You might need an accountant, you might not, it's up to you, but even limited companies these days, so that'll be a business name and limited. You don't even need an accountant for those now, you can do it yourself. I'd advise you didn't, but that becomes a legal entity in its own right. So if there's anything legal happens, then it's directed at the company as though it were a person, not you. You're simply a director and an employee of that company, and that's how that works.
That's the kind of thing I would value some help and guidance on, and as you've already hinted, staying on the right side of the tax man would be a very important thing to do. And I've retired from industry where all of that was done for me, so I've never never given it any thought. But clearly, I would have to become somewhat more proficient in understanding these things, and that would be a key source of help I would be looking for.
Well, the good news is once you know what you're doing, this can be done for you too. You can get an accountant, you can get a bookkeeper. My bookkeeper is actually from India. I use him through a platform called Upwork.com. A lot of my assistants, the online people, are in different countries. And I know I have assistants in the UK as well who do things with me too. But yeah, it's good to know that stuff. It's also good when it's not your specialism to get somebody else to do it for you. As for your photography group, you then need to work out how to draw a line in the sand, or at least a division between what's free and what's paid. So if you are referring to what you're doing at the moment as just photo walks or get-togethers, then you need to do a workshop or one-to-one lessons. So if you have a workshop which is maximum 4 people, which is a ridiculously low amount of people for a workshop, you are selling the one-to-one, well, the many-to-one support, but it's like 4-to-1 maximum. And if it's one-to-one, you're selling it as being one-to-one, where people can really get to grips with stuff.
Yeah.
You probably will find some people will make the transition to paying you. But also, if you do what I used to do and get hold of interesting venues, exclusive venues that people can't normally get into, especially ones where photography isn't normally permitted or they're not normally open at night, and you want to do a low light on night photography workshop, then that'll be a good excuse too, because there's a building to be paid for.
Yeah.
It's more, the transition is probably more in you than them. You need to decide how things are going to be and start acting accordingly, and people will follow suit.
Well, I think once having gathered the knowledge and the understanding of how to run a business, as it were, legally and properly, in terms of the control of income and recording that effectively, and the accountancy issues, then the next question for me would be all around promotion and advertising, in effect creating my shop window, as it were. And
that's good to know. I mean, one of the questions I have for you all today is what should be in the course, and you've just given me 2 big ones there. I mean, promotion and advertising, that's huge.
Yeah.
But then again, so is teaching, if you've never done teaching before, and getting that right as well. Thank you. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Hamish, what have you got for me, please?
Hi, Gary. Thank you.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, look, I was actually really quite interested in your idea about photo walks.
Okay. Did you have a specific question?
I think really it's about how you started up, because my kind of view is, so I'm a photographer, have a day job. I have actually taught photography in the past, but I live in a particular part of London, and I'm quite keen to kind of do photo walks, show people kind of my area. And my initial thought is do it for free, but then where do I take it from there?
Okay. You need to know where your next step is. You need to know how you're going to do it commercially after that, even if you're not doing it yet. So you will begin with the end in mind. I think we've got a little bit of feedback. It might actually be on here. Steve, can you mute yourself as well, just in case, please? Let's try that. Yeah, it's coming through yours, Hamish, but it'll be okay. I'll just try not to talk very much. I'll sit right back or something, I don't know. I would, first of all, combine local knowledge with photography. So get yourself a guidebook, and there will be guidebooks available. Which city is it you live in? London, did you say?
Yeah, it is.
Which part of London?
Hackney Wick.
Okay. So something that's been very popular before are things like street art photo walks. And you don't need any particular kind of camera to photograph street art. A smartphone will do. And if you were going to do that, for instance, and I'm just giving you this as an example, even if you never do it, how I would approach it, go off and meet some of the artists. get to know, once you get to know one, they'll put you in touch with the others. Sometimes they can be a little bit secretive, but they want people to know about their work. And very often there are designated areas for street art anyway. But if you become a little bit of an expert on the subject matter, and you were able to sometimes introduce one of the artists on the tour, then that would be very popular. I've seen it happen. I've seen people do it. And you can do that with a phone. But it's the same for anything. You need a little bit of knowledge of the subject. You need a good route worked out. And if you are going to do it for free, think of what your motives are. If you're doing it for free because you don't feel you, at the moment, deep down inside, deserve to be paid for it, then maybe take another look deep down inside and decide you deserve to be at least paid a contribution. Even if you just collect tips, or you say it's what people can afford, or if it's a £5 or a tenner, or you call it a contribution, whatever you're comfortable with, and then you work from there.
Yeah, I actually know a street, she's a street artist, and she does kind of tours in Paris, and that's how she started. She kind of did, oh, you know, do a donation. So yeah, that's kind of a,
Perfect.
yeah,
That would work.
helpful.
That would work.
In the sense, yeah,
It's
if
actually a tour guide company that does this.
you,
Actually, a tour guide company that there's a bit of a delay. I know. I think your connection must be slow, but there's a bit of a delay. I know. I think your connection must be slow. There's a company in Europe where they employ tour guides to run free tours. Feedback's horrendous, but you get the idea, don't you? Feedback's horrendous, but you get the idea, don't you?
I do.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Hamish. If you can just mute for now, please, just to stop the feedback. Thanks, Hamish. Always come
Thanks,
back.
Gary.
Now, please, just to stop. It's just sometimes with a laptop when the microphone and the speakers are close together. Okay, you can put your hand down now, Hamish, if you like. Joe was next up. Hi, Joe.
Hi. Yeah, it's been very interesting. I suppose my question is managing expectations. I already do the odd photo workshop through a local arts charity. We take veterans out into the Cambrian Mountains because I'm based in Mid Wales, and we just landscape photography. We have a mountain leader with us as well. So it's all organised by an organisation, Radiate Arts. Now, I've been working as a photographer for many years, and I'm interested in going further with this because I can't compete with the £200 weddings anymore. It's this sort of provincial photography business model has been pretty much destroyed by the onset of digital photography, which is being very, it's democratized photography, but now anybody can do it, which is great. But so I feel probably the same way as you, that I'm now looking to, instead of fighting that, let's take it and run with it and start helping these people make better photographs. Now, the point I want to try and understand more is this managing of expectations, because a lot of people love the over processed, HDI'd to death photographs. People seem to love it. Personally, I mean, I'm from film. I do lots of workshops with cyanotypes, for example, and traditional photographic processing. But the workshops we do are very much for manual photography, you know, showing them how to do your compositions, teaching them how to look, how to use their eyes, how to actually embrace what the scene they're looking at, which is great. It's very popular, and it's hugely successful, and I'd love to do more. But when we get back and we do the brief, they all want to know how to turn it into a photograph that they've seen that's been thrown into a filter on Lightroom, and it's thrown out something that looks nothing like reality. So again, would you manage the expectations?
Manage expectations of what they're going to...
What the intention of that day is. I mean, because I don't want to go out and teach them hours on. I mean, I did the Adobe associateship with Photoshop, and I've been using it since version 4. So theoretically, I could show them, but I'm a passionate believer in photography, in its true sense. But I suppose my worry is we set up a course or a workshop or whatever. And I need people to know that it is a real photographic course. It's not about letting their phone filters do it for them. It's about making the person. So do you find this is a problem in communicating that?
Not really. Most people who come to a photography workshop know what they want. They're going to go off and do their own thing with their images anyway, but you can also point them in the right direction. If you're running a group on Facebook, you can give them feedback that points them in the right direction, you know, complimentary, but
Yes.
say you might want to try this. But first of all, you've got to be okay with it. You've got to be okay with whatever somebody does as a result of the workshop. You know, even if they end up doing something that makes your eyes bleed, but they're happy with it,
Yeah.
then they will usually hang around to be shown another way to do it. It's part of the evolution of new digital photographers. They find all these things, they do them, then they get bored with them and they move on. And so a lot of people in our workshops, first of all, everything they processed was really not horrendously saturated, but more saturated than average, let's say. But in time, people learn to appreciate things like muted palettes. And if you start telling them about color composition, their whole idea of color changes. But in terms of managing expectations, I would only make promises like you'll be a better photographer by the end of it. And that can be a few things. It can be taking better images, or it can also be having a more conscious idea of what they're doing and doing the stuff that works more often. But I wouldn't promise too much. It's not that you can't keep your promises. It's just you need to keep it fairly open-ended.
Yeah, I don't think it's about sort of promising. I think it's about, I suppose this is an area that we touched on earlier on about marketing. I don't know, I've not tested this because I've not diversified into sort of doing a lot of workshops because I've only done this as a contractor to this arts organization. But if I was to market, there's a company close to us that do photographic tuition. All their photographs are from around the world. They have no relevance to Powys and Mid Wales, but they're all hugely over processed. They're beautiful pictures and they're done very well, I will add. You know, they're not eye bleeders, they are stunning images. But I would imagine they would get more business than somebody like myself that wants to promote a more traditional, realistic photographic view. If that makes sense.
Maybe just don't let that get in the way and lead by example.
Right.
You can also lead by educating people on how photography is judged and evaluated. The only formal judge training in the country is in North Wales. In RIL, the Societies of Photographers do it about once every 2 years. If you ever want to do that, it doesn't cost a fortune. And once you take a fellowship with them, you can be a judge for them. But the judge training, anybody can do it. It was, how much was it when I did it? Maybe £200, £250 for 2 days. But if you already know a little bit about judging and evaluating images, then you can start evaluating people's images for them. They love it. And you can educate them about it that way. Just do it subtly. And if somebody produces something you don't like, just be okay with it. Sometimes the easiest way to give feedback to something you really don't like is not to give feedback to it.
Yeah, diplomacy is key.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't give it attention.
Yeah.
But it's about being okay about it. About what people produce, and then knowing that if those people stick with you, you can guide them in the right direction. But sometimes the right direction for somebody isn't always your direction.
No, I understand that completely. Yeah, it's not about making a duplicate of myself and my photographs. That's last thing.
Sometimes it might be, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
Just try and draw out of them whatever's there.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Francis.
Hiya, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah.
Hi, all right. So Joe's probably going to hate me for saying this now. Well, I'll start from the beginning. I took up photography the beginning of the lockdown in 2020. And for 6 weeks, obviously I had no work. So I went out and I taught myself manual to an extent with the help of another Facebook group. But, leading on, what I found was that I used to paint when I was younger. And I found that Lightroom particularly, because it's easier, as you all well know, it it's very much an extension of the paintbrush.
It's okay. Joe doesn't hate anyone. He's just said in chat. So you're all right.
No, I'm joking.
I know.
When he was saying all this stuff, I'm thinking, oh God, I'm going next. So I'm like the Antichrist to Joe here. I'm the anti-purist. So yeah, so leading on to my question, I've had a Facebook group and it's grown quite large now, but I edit quite heavily. I specialize in HDR mergers. And I often get people asking me, oh, how do you create, this look? And I'm very honest, say, look, I take a minimum of 2 or 3, depending on the light situation, images, and then I'll merge them in Lightroom, but then that's only the beginning, you see. Then I'll look at color grading, split toning and all that. So my question is, if I was to create a Zoom course or some Zoom training, how many people would you, I don't know, how many people would you have on it, and how much would you charge per lesson? I don't know.
How many have you got in your group?
Just gone over 28,000.
Wow, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have things set up so other people can't promote themselves, but it's okay for you to in the group?
No, I don't have any. It's just been a group where it's, I don't even know. I just use it to promote myself, to sell me art. Product service, that's what it is, my page. It's a product service. So I just get loads of comments, loads of people messaging me.
So first of all, the thing is, when people say, some people say that photo's not real, it's photoshopped. My next question to them is, what do you mean by that? It's like a derogatory comment that it's been altered somehow in a way that isn't natural, or you're saying it's been edited on software. Because if you're saying it's been photoshopped, it's been edited in software, that's like saying that something taken on optical film has been darkroomed. It's like it has to be processed. A camera, it may get there in time, but currently not produce an image the way the human eye sees the world. The human eye can make all kinds of adjustments at the pixel level, even though we don't operate in pixels. And we tend to adjust for things like exposure, so we get to see everything. But in order to get that level of detail and to get the dynamic range appropriate in a photograph, sometimes something like HDR helps. But also you can achieve similar aims by just shooting in RAW and using the RAW sliders in Camera Raw. Sometimes what you do in the RAW sliders is akin to HDR, the way it's done. So how would you go about promoting it? Well, first of all, you would do it in the format that I said, which is Zoom calls and a separate Facebook group. Now, play that one carefully, because you also want people in the main group to post stuff there and say that they're on the course, because that's going to promote it. You could also do with something that would collect email addresses from people in your group, because you've got 28,000 members in that group. They're all Facebooks. They belong to Facebook right now. And if Facebook does something to your account, you've lost those 28,000.
Yeah, no, it's
if you have email addresses for them, and there are plugins that will let you collect an email address and put it in a Google Doc when somebody joins a group as one of the questions. Just search for those. But anyway, how do you do it? You just start it. You just say, right, we're going to do this course. It's going to be 5 weeks long. This is what we're going to cover. And this is what it's going to cost. And you have a separate Facebook group for the people in the course to discuss course matters in. But when they post their images, you can say, right, now go post it in the main group.
Yeah, promote the results.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Exactly. And it would be helpful if you said you were part of the course when you do that.
Yeah.
So you have 2 groups operating. And in terms of payment processing, you can use PayPal. You can set up a payment link. You can use paypal.me. I mean, I'm all in favor of the path of least resistance, the lowest tech when you're starting up. Don't pay a fortune for things. So do you know paypal.me?
I've got a PayPal link. I don't know what .me is.
That's it. So every PayPal account has the option of having a .me.
Yeah.
So it's something, it comes out as paypal.me/ and then whatever handle you've set for that, like a subdomain. And then your name will come up. I would advise you to put your logo, your photograph in there rather than it just being like an outline of a human head, because people will know it's you then and they won't worry about it. And they can pay it like that. So it'll be something like paypal.me / and then / if it's £45, the number 45. That'll automatically set it as £45. And that person can then use their PayPal account, or they can log in as a guest with a card, and they don't have to open a PayPal account. That's a dead easy way to do that.
That's that's some good insight, that, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Good, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cheers.
Were there any more questions from anyone before I ask you one more? In that case, my question to you is, and you can put this in chat, what does Neil say? I work for Silverprint selling analog materials. Yeah, there's room for everyone, of course there is. And people will often move from one format to another. So my question is, what kind of things should a course like this cover? I'm going to email you anyway and ask you to just do a brief survey, and all it'll have is one question, saying something like, what 2 things should this course cover? But what do you need to know to get you to the point where you can run a photography training business? What's the biggest barriers you think right now? What information do you need? I'm going to change my view here so I can see everyone, and then I might just ask someone. Peter Rudolph, what can you think of? Oh, business acumen, Neil says. Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Gary. Yeah, for me, it's just getting started. How to get started, getting the information out there. How to get started.
Yeah, how to go from where you are now with no contacts and no reputation as a trainer to running workshops. That's a good one. Yeah.
How to get where Francis is with 28,000 on Facebook. It's if you've got that sort of following on a group. I'd have thought, no disrespect to Francis, but I'd have thought it'd be pretty easy to then take the next step. But for myself, I'm day one, if you like, nothing.
Okay. I'll have a think about that. What I'm also going to do over the next few weeks, I might put a few short YouTube videos together. I might send a few emails out with information in, and that'll be a good start. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Sandy, have you got anything?
I emailed you. I've done a little bit of doing tours, food and photography tours in Italy, doing it in the off season, and certainly found Facebook was a really good way. I have a mailing list because I have had a blog for a number of years when I was living there. So for the people who were interested, it was about picking up the threads of things they'd seen I'd been doing in the past. So that helped. And that was that marketing piece. Now that I'm in the UK, part of the challenge I'm finding is I've got all that sort of business side of it, but it's connecting with people when I'm new to an area, or sort of stepping into picking up what would work in an area. Just some tips on that would be helpful and relevant.
I'm sure I can write an email or an article about that. Thank you. Okay. Who else? Ron, hello, Ron Cunningham.
Sorry, I started late and I forgot all about it. I was out and
right.
I was on my mobile when I first
Sorry,
started.
I think I missed you for a while in the waiting room. It was when I got rid of the slides, I could see you.
Yeah, no, I came home and I changed over to my laptop.
Okay.
I think going on from what Sandy said, I just started my own photography business in September, and it's been very difficult to get known. So the marketing side is the biggest issue. I think it's the hardest thing to do is like, how do you get yourself seen by other people to get the business started? And I'm still struggling with that. Fortunately enough, we have a local business gateway here that I'm getting funds for getting digital marketing training. but that's the hardest part. So I think the marketing side of doing this is a huge thing. I have done works. I've done one workshop before with somebody. I've done teaching on other subjects in the past. So the training side, I'm interested in.
I would agree. It's a one that you need to crack, and I can certainly advise on that. Okay. Thank you. Okay. John Spalding says, how best to start, market, promote it, how whether to partner with local agencies. Yeah, you can do that. The only thing to be aware of, John, is that some local agencies, public funded agencies, aren't that great. And while they may offer marketing support, they're not that good at marketing in most cases. Very often they're just a group of people who used to work for the council. Now they have another job. I mean, sounds like I'm doing them down a bit, but I've been around enough of them to know that there's a lot of really nice, well-meaning people out there working in things like local economy and tourism support. When it comes down to actual help and marketing, yeah, you can kind of do things. Some of them will help, but if you want to do anything at any kind of scale, you have to do it yourself, really. John, I understand. Thank you. Who else? Tim Fox. Have you got anything? You're muted at the moment, Tim.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm here. My position is that I've been doing photography sort of professionally for about 18 years, pretty much since lockdown. It obviously all turned to nothing for me. And I've been doing other jobs, and the photography starting to come back, the odd jobs. I do event stuff, I do commercial stuff, all sorts. Basically, at the moment, whatever somebody will pay me to do, I'll do it. But I was at the photography show a month before last, and there was a guy there who, based in the Lake District, who was setting up a franchise for photography training. It seemed quite interesting to me, and I was sort of 50-50 whether to go ahead with it. He was talking about a £2,000 investment, but if anybody that took him up on the offer before the 4th of April, he obviously wanted to get in for the last financial year, it was sort of half price at £1,000, and I thought, well, yeah, it's quite good. And obviously he would set a prospectus, and it was things, various different levels, but initially it was basically, that transiting across from auto to manual. So, a learn your camera thing. And he was, and it all sounded rather good. But I mean, I'm based in Southampton on the south coast, and I started Googling, I thought, I'll put myself in the position of the people that I'm supposed to be attracting if I want to go ahead with this. I mean, God, there was so many people claiming to teach photography at one level or another. I got bored with looking. And that was the problem. And he was talking about, I think it was, a sort of workshop, an example. It wasn't set in stone, but sort of 4 to 6 people paying £85 to £99 for a 6-hour day, 10 till 4. I mean, which seemed reasonable, but I mean, there was one that I found, my local camera club, they were effectively doing the same thing for £21.
It's different. People will perceive it as different. And it's up to you how you differentiate yourself as a brand. The thing with franchising is it can work well and it cannot work well. It all depends who's doing the franchising. So this isn't a comment on any particular company. For me, there are 2 things that I would evaluate if I was going to take up a franchise offer. One would be, can this person get me clients? Do they have a marketing system in place that is going to get me clients? And if so, what's the expectation? What can I expect to get from them? The other one is their expertise in business systems. It may well be that they have managed to bottle up 5, 10, 20 years of experience in a few procedures that work, in which case it's worth paying for that to get a step ahead. But I would evaluate training courses the same way, by the way. The downside of a franchise, of course, is that the way the franchise model works usually is you are tied permanently to paying that person a commission.
Yeah. And
if you don't want to do that, well, you've got to evaluate it against the benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but that was I mean, his background was in although he'd been doing photography for some years, he'd done sort of 30 years in business training. So, you know, no doubt he had that side sewn up. But you know, the first point you made, which was my biggest concern, is how does he get the clients to you? I mean, there would be nothing to stop me trying to find my own ones, but the whole idea of this, that he would point the clients at you, and he was saying that he advertises in things like Amateur Photographer magazine and stuff like that, or, you know, which I'm sure is good, but I'm just not convinced at the moment. You know, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not totally convinced I could do that. I mean, you know, I've shown a few friends odd photography things, but there's a bit different to showing your friends what they should be doing to actually, you know, being with a group of people that, you know, that are paying you to learn something. I mean, you know, that's obviously assuming I have the capabilities of doing that. But I'm just not convinced that this is why I haven't gone ahead with it. And this was my interest in, you know, when I saw your post, was I thought, well, yeah, I'll jump in and have a look and see what, you know. I mean, all of you have raised valid and interesting points.
The good news is I can help with all of them. So I'm going to have to go off and think about that, and I'm going to write some articles. I might do some videos. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to do an entire course for free, but I'm going to give you a lot of stuff that'll benefit you. And then what we'll do is have a look at the areas that are of most interest to people. I'll put a course together, and those of you that want to do a course with me can do one. And I haven't gone any further with organising it than that. To me, this was something that was a few months down the line, but if enough people are interested, I might even do it this summer. So let me think about that, but also noted, and remember, I've recorded this, and I will go back through it, and I'm going to not do direct answers necessarily, but use it as inspiration to write articles and maybe do the occasional presentation for you. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I'm just going to go through chat for stuff that I've missed. John said he meant getting listed in a local park recreation agency. Yeah, do it. Don't expect miracles, but free publicity is great. You know, if it's not taking you too much time and effort, you don't have to outlay any money. Go for it. Do it. There is actually someone who does summer camps, photography summer camps for kids, and does an outline of how to do that. I forget who it is right now, but I'll see if I can find a link. But it's easy enough. Anybody with any experience teaching kids, especially in a school, will know that most of the time you are repeating the same learning points. You might take one learning point and you do it again and again for 3 hours in different ways, and you play games around it. That's usually how kids engage in learning. But yeah, free publicity, absolutely. Sandy says around pricing in the UK market. If you were fine with setting pricing for tours in Italy and Canada and the US, then I guess if those prices are all pretty much the same, try them in the UK. The thing with pricing is it's okay not to be comfortable with what you're asking for. But the thing is, you should never compete on price. Don't try to be the cheapest photography workshop in the area, because it's about more than price. It's about reputation. It's about prestige. It's about the way people feel when they're with you and the results they get. If you are charging a particular price and you don't think what you're offering is worth it, make what you're offering worth it. Does that make sense? That's the better way around to do it. Right, if doing a photo walk, this is from Ron, would you need to contact the local authority? No. When I first started doing night photography workshops, which by the way, I got into night photography because half the year I couldn't do anything else with working during the day. So I thought I may as well embrace it and go out and take photographs at night. But it's a good one, you know, half the year, if you teach night photography, even in a city centre, you're still working. You don't have to stop because the nights are too dark. No, you wouldn't need to contact them. If you were on local authority land, maybe, you know, play that one by ear. Sometimes it's courteous to ask them. There's a place near Sedgefield, not so far from me, Hardwick Park. We would go in there at night. It's not really supposed to be somewhere you go at night. But I asked them and they said it was fine. They worked for the council and I didn't need to pay anything, but I said I would let them know every time I went. So I would just send them a courtesy email. There's a place on Hadrian's Wall that's good for astrophotography that has a car park. Didn't need to do it, but every time we had a group, I would email the guy at Northumberland National Parks to let him know we were going to be there, just in case anybody reported a group. But when I first started doing night photography workshops like astrophotography out in the countryside, I would phone it into the police call room on the main police number. I think it's 101, but it's not important. They're not that bothered. I soon found that the operator was being polite and logging it, but I didn't need to. The only time I ever got police anywhere near me was when I was doing night photography on my own to start with, and they could see torches flashing about, and they were out on patrol. But our area about 5 years ago decided crime stops at 9 o'clock, therefore they wouldn't have police on patrol anymore, so that stopped too. So no, you don't need to contact anybody, but you need to take care of health and safety and insurance. Pleased you found it interesting, Joe. Tom, yeah, great stuff. DBS, yes, Joe. Yes, if you work with kids, you should have a DBS, but if you have somebody who has a DBS with the kids, like a teacher, you don't need one. So that's a way to get around that. But if you're working solo with kids, yes, you need DBS clearance, absolutely. Russell, any mileage in starting a YouTube channel? Yeah. Yeah, there are plenty of people. Oh, DBS is police clearance. It used to be, what the hell was it? It had another name, didn't it? Anyway, it was just police clearance. You fill a form in and they check your police record, make sure you're not dodgy, and they give you a certificate. CRB, thank you, Frank. Yes, I should know that one. PVG in Scotland, Ron, thank you. So starting from scratch, Russell, yeah, YouTube channel, but make it interesting. Trying to think of examples. There's loads of them, but I also know loads of photographers who didn't embrace YouTube and they do okay. Thomas Heaton, he's not so far away from me. He has a YouTube channel. He's done well out of it. And he did a talk for us and was the first to admit that when he did a YouTube channel, I have to be careful, I can't even remember his words here, but it was words to the effect of that his work wasn't particularly standing out, but he got lots of work from running that YouTube channel. And when I got Tom to do a talk for us, people were amazed. Hey, you've got Tom Heaton, how? Well, because somebody I know used to be in his camera club. That's how, you know, he's local. But he built up his name with his YouTube channel. Now, go and watch them, because what he is very good at is producing video. He does very cinematic video. He uses a drone, he uses all kinds of things, and it tells a story. So sitting holding a camera talking to a webcam, maybe, if you can get a following. But if you did what Tom did and you tell a story and you go places, it takes a long time. It went down well. Yeah, John says there's something in Ontario. Yeah, everybody has it. And Ron, you're absolutely right. YouTube is a lot of work. I have an 8-year-old son. He watches YouTube constantly. And I've just about made my peace with the things he's watching. There's nothing wrong with them, but it's like, at first I'm thinking, why would you watch some other kid opening a box with a toy in it? But you know what? There are people that do camera unboxing, and there are people that watch that. Why would you watch another kid playing a video game, a video of a kid playing a video game rather than playing it? The answer's in psychology. I'm not going into too much detail. It's a thing called mirror neurons. It was discovered 20 odd years ago, but we knew it anyway. That when we see somebody doing something, we can have the same experience as them by watching them. You know, you might say, why go to a gig and watch a band? Why not just listen to the CD at home? A CD, I'm showing my age, even saying CD, aren't I? Vinyl, that's where it's at. It's mirror neurons. There's a part of our brain that fires off when we're close to something and when we're experiencing it. Why do people watch sports instead of playing sports? Well, first of all, the people who are playing them are usually more skilled and more fit, but you get to experience life as a skilled, fit athlete. It's weird. We simulate these things. It's the way that films work. It's the way how come even in a comedy we can cringe and feel uncomfortable for somebody, but it's still funny. It's the way we work. But we know it's not real. But we act as though it is sometimes. But yeah, that was a long way around of putting that one. You've got to find something different in YouTube. One way to do YouTube is do a kind of video blog and email people about it, have an email list. You can't really expect to get found organically on YouTube unless you're doing a lot and you're tagging your videos very well. But yeah, it's a lot of work. But then again, if you fancy it, go for it. probably will get you good publicity, and eventually you'll get sign-ups to your email list for nothing. Anything else before we sign off for today? I hope that has been useful to you. We've covered a lot of ground there. Pretty much anything you can ask, I've been there and done it, or I know somebody who has. So feel free to keep emailing, by the way. I'm going to edit this video and put it out so you can see it again. Price and structures, Frank. Your best guess. Usually what I'll go for in terms of pricing is what I think something's worth, what I think my time's worth doing it. When I first started doing workshops, they were ridiculously cheap. And what I did was charge whatever Premier Inn was advertising the room for at that time. I don't know why. I think it started off as 35 quid for a short workshop, but they were big numbers. So some of those had 15, 20, 30 people in. Unless you've got assistants, you can't do a lot of quality teaching in a group that size, but it's the only way to make it work if you're hiring a historic building or something. But I changed my pricing model. I kind of got stuck with selling vouchers, prepaid workshop vouchers. And then when COVID came, I had to give people another year and a bit. But once we got rid of that, I went back to charging just whatever was suitable. So we might charge anything up to a couple of hundred for a smaller group. It's a little bit longer, down to 50 or 60 quid in a big group, that kind of thing. And people are happy to pay it. But another good way to do that is do some research. Google people doing your kind of photography or in your kind of area, and you'll soon find what they're charging. Then you can charge more. That's another way of thinking about competition. Don't necessarily compete on price. Put your price up, be the most expensive one in the area, and justify it. Sounds a bit back to front, but it's a nice way of doing business when it works. Hey, thanks everyone. That's been an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to connecting with you again, and look forward to seeing an email soon, and I'll give you the replay of this. Cheers. Take care, everyone. Bye now.